What's it like coming back from a war zone into normal day-to-day life? What was the transition like?
To be frank with you, probably the worst part of my whole military experience.
Really?
Yeah.
You would think it would be the best part. You're getting back.
No.
Yeah.
Fly back, arrive at Sydney Airport, bus to Eastern Command Personnel Depot on South Head in Sydney. 2 nights of handing in your gear and signing off gear and all the rest of it. Heavy night in the boozer. Sign all the papers. Then given your farewell speech, and you're out the door. Gone are all the people, all the systems and people that you've worked with for 2 years. Gone. We're told in our briefing, don't wear your uniform out there because there's a lot of people who don't like the Vietnam War and you'll get a hard time. You'll get pissed. Stay close. Don't talk about it. Keep it to yourself. Go back to your civvy work. I've got no parents there. Got no girlfriend there. Got no family there.
And how old are you?
23 by this stage.
Wow.
And the loneliest, most miserable few minutes as you go out of that first few days were just the worst. Everything that I stood for, everything I'd worked hard for, appeared to be all gone. The newspapers are full of anti-Vietnam War demonstrations and all the rest of it. So I ended up getting on the train and going to Melbourne. I left my car in Melbourne. So I got the train down to Melbourne, and I wasn't due back to go back to Asia for another, because you get a certain amount of leave after the. So I wasn't due back to go for a fortnight. So I didn't have any place to live. So I went into a residential hotel, sat in my room. Terrible.
Yeah. I think a lot of people face that when, not just from war, but when they get out of a certain job or they get out of something where they're so used to structure.
Sure, yeah.
Particularly for military personnel.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys that have come back from, whether it be Afghanistan or Iraq, they've done tours, they leave, they retire, or they're done. And one of the biggest struggles for them is structure. And even for me, leaving a normal job and doing stand-up, all of a sudden, I'm just at home. You know, the structure is gone from your life.
Sure.
And you're so used to it.
Yeah.
You live this entire life.
And that's when you need your family around you and all of that. And
you need a support structure.
You need your domestic structure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was lost for some time there because I just sort of woke up and thought, oh, what do I do now? You know, you've been told from a young age, you're at school, you get up,
Absolutely.
you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
It is. I'd also been involved in searching bodies just the week or two before. And there'd been a battle, and they'd called for intelligence support to have a look for any captured documents that you could get from the trouser pockets and all the rest of it. And I remember being perfectly capable of doing that, even though it was messy and horrible. But in those moments, those dark moments when I came out, I couldn't help remembering the photographs of those dead men's families. That there was wives and children in the photographs in their wallets.
That's what stuck in your mind.
And that's what stuck in my mind. Yeah.
How did that?
I don't know why
you?
it stuck in my mind.
Well, that's a traumatic experience, obviously, and for whatever reason, your brain has captured that moment to call back on.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of people who come back from war zones or experience something traumatic in their lives are suffering from PTSD, and I particularly would think that back in that time period, no one is acknowledging that at all. I mean, from the days of World War II, World War I was shell shock, now obviously recognised as PTSD.
But even the shell shock people were only the people who actually were shelled, whereas the general experience wasn't considered to be shell. Anyway, doesn't matter. It was a difficult time, and I went back to work in ASIO, and I just threw myself at the job. Just threw myself at it, and ended up getting posted. Got a promotion and got posted up to Sydney. And it was whilst I was in Sydney that I started a relationship with my first wife, and she had a little girl, and that was helpful. That really was. She already had a little girl, and the little girl was being looked after during the day while she went to work by a lady who was married, lovely lady who was married to Tom Nadangilevu, who was a Fijian Tongan, a very big, huge man, ex-middleweight champion of Fiji or something like that. Big, huge man. Kindest, gentlest man you've ever come across in your life. And I sat in the car with him one day coming back from the gym, and he said something or other, and I opened up on this business of the bad memory, and he gave me one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard, and it helps me to this day whenever I woke up in the middle of the night with it. He said, I want you to consider your experience in Vietnam, including those horrible moments, putting your hand in the squishy bits and all the rest of it, all those things. So I want you to consider those the TV screens on either side of a corridor that you're walking down, and each experience is done on those TV screens. And he said, you'll be looking at one, and then you look at the other, and then you look at another, and then you look at another, and that will be your total focus. He said, but there's coming a door in the corridor. He said, I want you to reach out and put your hand on that handle and open the door and go through, close the door, make sure it's properly latched. He said, now look at the walls. He said, they're blank. He said, that's your future. You've got to put the scenes that you want on those walls. And he said, if ever you wake up in the middle of the night with those thoughts again, close the bloody door and think about going forward. And that really helped. Isn't that an interesting thought?
Yeah. And often that to conceptualize something visually can help a lot of people with mental health issues and those type of things, particularly with PTSD. I know a lot of people, one of my mates who was in the army, I was over at his house and he was asleep, he was having a nap, and I went to wake him up, and he'd been through some things over there and he freaked out. He got very emotional, and because I woke him up, and you know, he went straight to sort of like something's happening, and through counselling, you know, he's sort of obviously getting better through time. But for that gentleman to offer that piece of advice for you,
and he's got no special training at all. In fact, he had very low level education, come out from Fiji, I think, but he was a Christian sort of a bloke. He had very strong Christian beliefs. And that instinct to care for the bloke sitting next to you instead of shyaking him, I think might be the origins of all of that. But he didn't have any psychological training or anything, as far as I know. I mean, I think he worked in the merchant ships, I think.
I think with fighters, they also have this attachment to people around them because they're the only people they know have gone through similar things.
Yeah, look, you might be right.
Perhaps it's something that
maybe it was something that he'd gone through. He'd lost a fight, and his trainer had said something like, "Yeah, that's true."
Who knows? I mean, for a fighter, they put 12 months behind themselves to get to one point. Then you lose. Then all of a sudden, everyone who's around you at one point has
could
disappeared.
well have been a trainer. You're quite right.